Darth Kermit here with a GenCon update and a bit of a very preliminary review of the soon-to-be-released tabletop tactical starship miniatures game Star Trek Into the Unknown from Wizkids. Hopefully this video will help people decide whether or not to pre-order this game. Even though it's already a couple weeks past GenCon, I wanted to go ahead and make this video because there's so little info out there on this game and I haven't seen anyone, even Ion Radio or Krabik, talk about some of the info I got from GenCon when I was able to sit down with one of the designers for more than an hour and play through the demo mission. He was extremely forthcoming and answered every question I asked without any marketing speak. Make sure to stay till the end for details on release date, expansions, and more. Before I get into everything, I do plan on making a series of how to play videos, card and strategy reviews, bat reps, and possibly a narrative campaign series, so if you like this content, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below and or support me on Patreon. It all helps me keep my videos short and to the point instead of playing the algorithm game. So as always, first, the short version for those who don't have time or don't really care about the nuance and just want to know if this game is for them so they can go ahead and pre-order. This game has a lot to it though, so I really would suggest sticking around for the whole video. Alright, so let's start with a bit of context. I'm a huge fan of Star Wars Armada and Berman-era Star Trek. I have about $1,000 sunk into Armada and I really love the more measured strategic pace of Armada over something like X-Wing. If you're like me, this game is a slam dunk for you. Go pre-order it after this video. This is a campaign game, so if you liked the Armada campaigns, Rebellion in the Rim and Corellian Conflict, this game is for you unless you really just dislike Star Trek. If you've never played Armada, but you love Berman-era Trek and want to feel like you're playing an episode of TNG or DS9 from a Starship tactical level, this is probably for you. If you don't quite know what that last bit means, stick around for the rest of the video. If you're a big Berman Trek fan and want some high-quality pre-painted 1/40,000th scale minis, this is an expensive way to go about it, but you'll probably be happy. Now on to who this game is not for. Number 1, this game is not for people who just want big tactical spaceship battles a la Armada. This is not reskinned Armada, not even a little bit. However, they will likely provide a similar large-scale battle option at some point. Number 2, this game is not for people who hate Star Trek. It has a ton of narrative and RPG-like mechanics in it that will likely kill it for you if you just hate the source material. Number 3, this game is not for people who like simple fleet experiences in Armada. Every ship just at base is about as complex as a half to fully loaded capital ship in Armada minus a few of the fiddly bits. But they get more complex as you add elite characters. Number 4, this game is not for people who really want to customize their ships. Most of the fleet building revolves around choosing characters, not equipment. I think that about covers it, but feel free to leave questions in the comments section. Okay, with that out of the way, let me briefly describe the game, because honestly, due to the complete dearth of info out there, I doubt there's many of you who really know what to expect. Star Trek Into the Unknown is a tactical miniatures game in which two players compete for objective points in dynamically narrative missions using pre-painted 1/40,000th scale miniature starships from the Dominion War era of Star Trek. Each mission is a dynamic series of 2 or more objectives played out on 1 to 3 3-foot by 3-foot play spaces that each contain a circular system in the middle and deep space on the outside. These missions can either be from the campaign or created by combining cards from the deck of 24 mission cards that come with the core set. Each player competes for objective points by performing a series of RPG-like test rolls using the stats of the characters assigned to their ships, as well as stats on the ships themselves. Objective points are earned more by how well the test is performed than just completing the objective or completing it quickly. Rerolls are super important here. After the first objective is completed, or at the end of round 3, a second objective is revealed based on which player has gained the most influence, usually a whole different die result, from the various rolls made during the first objective. Once this second objective is completed, or at the end of round 6, objective points are added up and a winner is declared. However, at any point during the first or second objective, either player can attack the other player and change the game dynamic dramatically. Because the game as of now is set before the start of the Dominion War, opening fire first will cause that player to lose points, thereby setting them back. However, you can get points by defeating opposing ships or win outright by defeating all opposing ships. In theory, I would see this happening frequently after the first objective is completed if one player is significantly ahead of the other. At that point, the game could become an all-out battle, or it could become a race to complete all objectives and score as many points before the other player can destroy enough or all of your ships. And now for my opinions on the components. In this review, I will be frequently comparing elements to Star Wars Armada, so I apologize if anything gets lost in translation. This is here to help people decide whether they want to pre-order, so if you don't really care about the details of component quality, then just know that overall I think the components are fantastic, with some caveats, and you can just skip to the gameplay section. First, the pre-painted ships are great. The core box comes with one Galaxy class, one Constellation class, and one Defiant class for the Federation side, and one Jem'Hadar battlecruiser and two Jem'Hadar fighters for the Dominion. See the FAQ section of the video for more info. Compared to Armada, I would say the paint jobs are better overall. The Dominion ships even have a nice metallic sheen. The nacelles and engine ports are all painted with a nice level of detail and precision. Overall, just fantastic paint jobs. The ship bases are also great. They're very solid and don't have any fiddly dials or ship cards. They lay flat on the table and can just be easily slid around. On the negative side, the ships are generally smaller than Armada. The plastic feels like a much softer, lighter, and cheaper plastic. Neither of these things is much of a downside to me, but if you really want your minis to feel solid and weighty, then you may want to go handle some of the minis in a game store or something before you commit. Next, the measurement and maneuver tools and the system boundary markers. The game comes with 3 painted acrylic rulers, 2 small plastic turning tools, and 3 sets of painted acrylic system markers. More on those in the gameplay section. These components are light but very solid, much better than the cardboard rulers and flimsy plastic maneuver tool from Armada. I do wish the turning tools were a nice weighty metal, but it's a pretty small gripe overall, and maybe they are actually a really light metal, but they felt like plastic to me. Either way, I will likely end up 3D printing a much heavier maneuver tool that'll move around on the table a bit less. Rounding out the plastic components are the dice. It comes with 12 custom dice that are completely functional, but nothing to write home about. Now the cardboard. Let's start with the ship cards. This is where people will likely get majorly overwhelmed at first glance. The ship cards are large, much larger than the ship cards in Armada, and each one has 4 dials and is filled with stats and abilities. Most of the ships feel like looking at a fully equipped Imperial Star Destroyer in Armada, and that's before adding characters to the ships. It's complex, but really not as complicated as it looks, more in the gameplay section. The quality of the ship cards is great. They're thick and sturdy, the dials likewise, and they turn easily but without easily nudging out of place. The art, typography, and symbology are all good to great, but the layout has a lot of compromises because of just how much info is on each ship card. Personally, I feel like a lot of problems could have been averted by separating the 4 dials from the ship card, a la the speed dial from Armada. However, 4 wandering dials for each ship could have been a huge pain in testing, and the ship cards as is do feel really Star Trek. More on the ship cards later though. You know what, just more on all this stuff later in the gameplay section. And that brings us to the character cards. If you want to do anything with the ships during the main gameplay phase, you'll need officers assigned to stations on the ships. The cardstock is high quality and the art is almost entirely excellent original art. The representative did mention that there were a few cards where they had to use screen caps from the shows, but I didn't see a single one during the demo. Likewise, the rest of the card components are high quality. No real complaints from me for any of the cards I saw. Penultimately, the miscellaneous cardboard tokens. Nothing special here, the art's good, the quality's pretty typical of recent Wizkids, nothing crazy. And lastly, the rulebook and campaign guide. Good quality printing, which is good because you're going to reference both books a lot. I didn't get to peruse the books for very long, so I don't know how well written, edited, or designed they are, but everything that I saw seemed really good. Alright, now for a quick rundown of gameplay. There are a few playthrough videos of the entire demo kit mission out there already, so I'm going to keep this pretty short and use my demo playthrough just for examples. Each game of Into the Unknown starts by selecting a campaign scenario and following the setup in the book, or constructing a mission out of the cards in the mission deck and following those setup instructions. Each mission starts with one objective called the Overture. Once the Overture is completed, or at the end of round 3, the Overture is replaced by another objective called the Complication. The demo scenario is extremely simple. We each had one small ship. I was playing as the Dominion, so I had a Jem'Hadar fighter, and my Federation opponent had a Defiant class. The majority of the 3-foot-by-3-foot play space was taken up by the circular system delineated by the curved acrylic system markers. There were 4 generic cardboard tokens set out representing objective locations, 3 anomaly tokens that basically acted as obstacles to avoid, and 2 objective tokens for each team placed on different objective locations. Our ships each began outside the system in any orientation, but they had to be touching our edge of the play space. We each pointed our ships at our nearest objective and then started the first round. Each round of Into the Unknown has 5 phases: the priority phase, standby phase, hazard phase, ready phase, and hail phase. Most of the game takes place in the priority phase, during which the players alternate taking actions till both players have passed. You take an action during this phase by activating a character and choosing one of the actions from the ship station that character is currently assigned to, and then paying any cost listed next to that action. For example, my first action of the first round was to activate the Vorta in the captain's chair and use the warp action by satisfying the cost with 2 of the Vorta's skill icons, plus 1 energy by rotating the energy dial from 6 to 5 to enter the system within sensor's range of my first objective. The demo mission was extremely symmetrical, so my Federation opponent basically took all the same actions, just relative to his objective points, so I'm not going to bother describing what he's doing. On my next turn, I wanted to scan the objective, so I referenced the campaign guide for the objective rules and discovered that a threat analysis test was required with special rules determining rerolls, bonus points, etc. In order to do this, I needed to activate the character at the instrument station and roll a number of dice determined by the command stat from the ship's crew dial, plus the discipline stat from my officer, with a number of rerolls equal to the sensor score from the ship's alert status dial. So I rolled the dice, rerolled my blanks, and scored enough successes to succeed at the sensor's roll and get a couple extra bonus points, and then rolled an analysis result as well that let me move the influence track toward my side. On my third turn, I activated the Helm Officer and maneuvered to my second objective. This cost another energy. Moving is a pretty elegant affair with the turning tool and acrylic rulers. See one of the aforementioned videos if you want a demonstration of exactly how it works. My only significant note on it is that you can turn the ship either at the beginning of the move or at the end of the move, but not both. After this, I passed because I had already activated my captain, instruments officer, and helmsman, so there were no more officers that I could activate that I wanted to activate. Next is the standby phase. During this phase, every ship gets to take 1 standby action, and then every projectile on the board is activated. A standby action is basically any action on the ship card or mission action, but is unassisted by an officer. Because officers can't assist, this makes almost every action much more difficult and/or more expensive. For example, warping would cost 3 energy during this phase because it requires 2 separate skills and an energy. You can pay energy in place of missing skills, so we get to a total of 3 energy cost. Standby can also allow a ship to do 1 action twice in 1 round, with the exception of firing weapons, which can only be done once per round, either in priority phase or standby phase. For my first standby action, I went ahead and used the mission action and scanned my next objective. I rolled fewer dice because my officer could not assist, but I still rolled enough successes to get another point or 2. After standby is the hazard phase. This one is super simple. Each player resolves all effects with the hazard tag. This could be damage cards or mission-specific space hazards or what have you. Next is the ready phase. Here you cancel out peril and advantage tokens on ships, refresh up to 3 officers, relocate up to 3 officers, and resolve any abilities with the ready tag, like recharging energy. Last is the hail phase. This phase wasn't used in the demo, but it seems to be entirely dependent on the mission being played, and the only note given is that when certain requirements are met, it can allow the Dominion player to flip their directive card, which is the card that tells you the penalties and scoring for opening fire and turning the game into a battle. After hailing, the priority token changes hands and the next round starts. And that's how a round goes. Now let me describe the flow of the game from a high level because it's something I really enjoyed. So the first objective, called the Overture, sticks around till all objective tokens are removed from the board until the end of round 3. Then we check the influence track to see whether the second objective, called the Complication, favors the Dominion or Federation. This was a really neat mechanic that went a long way towards making the game feel like playing out an episode of Star Trek. For example, in the demo mission, the Federation Complication means your second objective is to race around the map beaming up evacuees, while the Dominion Complication is running around destroying outposts. It's very thematic how the mission evolves during play, and it's also another strategic element that each player can influence to give themselves an advantage during the second half of the game. All in all, I think this is an extremely thematic game while providing a ton of strategic and tactical choices. It solidly felt like a Dominion War era episode of Star Trek, and playing as the Dominion, it totally felt plausible that if I ever felt like I might be falling behind on the mission, I could just turn and open fire on my opponent and try to win that way. I like that it has a ton of RPG elements, which is very thematic to Star Trek. Special abilities are from characters and not equipment, and things like that. It's also super cool that objectives can span up to 3 star systems. I don't know how well it's going to scratch the Armada itch for some people though. It hews well to the theme of 90s Trek where even large ships maneuver very quickly and easily, so it doesn't have the stately naval warfare feel of Armada. And the firing arcs are simple and the same across all ships, which makes the bases and all of that a lot less complicated and easier to manage. And the armaments in those arcs are obviously different across different ships. But my point is that from a ship combat perspective, this game is much more about resource management than positioning and thinking 3 turns ahead like Armada. You really don't much have to worry about what speed your ship is going or which direction it's facing at any given time, which again is very thematic to Trek, but may keep it from satisfying the die-hard Armada fans out there. For me, I imagine that till they get a few expansions out and add large-scale fleet battles, there will still be a significant place for Armada on my game table, but once that happens, I could see this totally displacing Armada. And now for the most important part, the FAQ. Like I said at the beginning, the rep answered every question I had without any reservation or marketing speak. That said, I'm sorry if I didn't ask your top question. So first, when's it coming out? The rep said product was already in the hands of some of the distributors or would be extremely soon, so the game could ship to retailers as early as the end of August. That could mean release anytime September through October, though I'm hearing that October is confirmed, but I haven't found any official source. What about expansions? The rep detailed the first 3 expansions for me and their general expansion strategy. First and foremost, they are working on adding as many factions as possible as quickly as possible. So the first 3 expansions will be adding Klingons, Cardassians, and Romulans, which is super exciting for me. The first expansion will add the Klingons and the cloaking mechanic. Ships will include a Negvar, Vorcha, and a bird of prey, which I assume will be a Burrell, as well as a Miranda and another Defiant class, the USS Valiant, for the Federation. It sounds like this expansion is already practically done, and to give you an idea of how much the devs love the IP, what they're apparently finalizing right now on the expansion is whether or not they can make the wings of the bird of prey movable. He also explained that the cloaking mechanic will work off incomplete, imprecise information mechanics where the ship will be within a certain proximity of its base or a token, and sensors checks can narrow the proximity. The other 2 planned expansions are still very preliminary, so not a ton of info. For the second expansion, I would expect a Galore, Keldon, and Hideki for the Cardassians. For the Romulan expansion, it will for sure have a D'Deridex. That will likely be the first ship made slightly out of scale because it would just be way too big a model. And then possibly Valdor, or he kind of hinted at even maybe a Scimitar? Again, very preliminary on the second and third expansions. I'm sure they're not even close to set in stone yet. But I, for one, am just super glad they're focusing on adding factions as quickly as possible. Which leads me to multiplayer. One of their main goals with adding factions as quickly as possible is apparently to get a 4-player variant out as soon as possible, which I think is going to be amazing and really kick in the Armada feels. I particularly enjoyed the 4- and 6-player campaigns in Armada. I would expect to see this with the Cardassian expansion because that's when you will have 4 factions out, with the Federation and Klingons basically versus the Dominion and Cardassians. Number 4, multiple core sets. Unequivocally, no, you will not need multiple core sets. The core set is absolutely a complete game on its own. This is definitely a big advantage over Armada to me. Armada's core set really felt like only half a game because it was. This also goes to value. I see a lot of concern over the $150 price point, and I think you get a lot more here than, say, the Armada core set, for example. It's roughly equivalent to getting 2 large base ships, a medium base ship, and 3 small base ships, versus the 1 medium base and 2 small base ships plus 10 fighter squadrons in the Armada core box. And the rulers and turning tools are much higher quality in my opinion. All in all, I think it's a decently better value. Okay, I think that'll do it for now. Drop a comment if you have any questions, and you can expect another video or 2 if I learn anything new before the game releases, and then you can expect plenty of videos after release. As always, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and or support me on Patreon. It's how we all get to keep creating videos like this. Till next time.
I find your lack of rainbow connection disturbing.